This is MJ. I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm an analyzer. Find all my work at mjmunoz.com. This is the review of Ultraman Zett Episode 4, which I'm calling Ultra Charged. And I have a lot of topics this episode, and I'm going to try to speak about them all very quickly so that the runtime of this episode is closer to 10 minutes than it is closer to 15 or 20 minutes, because I'd like to keep the episodes a little bit shorter. Before I go on, I'd like to do a little ad for myself, which is to say that I have all sorts of podcasts going on now on mjmunoz.com, and you can subscribe to the podcast feed for audio only, or you can watch the videos, and the show notes are always going to be on mjmunoz.com, and then in the show notes will be linked everything you need for the RSS feed. For right now I have it for just a couple places, but I'm going to add more as time goes on. I have to manually add a few of them, but there's a couple that are automatically there. If you're a Google or Android user, that's great, because you could just get the RSS feed and put it in any podcatcher that you have on your phone, or you could do it through Spotify or Amazon. That's who I have the podcast published through right now. And yeah, that's what I have. And also, I'm including in the show notes my Ultraman inspired children's picture book story or manuscript that I've written, and it's a rough draft for a couple reasons. One, it needed to be worked on at the time, but two, I've changed it since then and upgraded it to be part of a whole universe of tokusatsu inspired children's picture books, as well as a short novel or shorts, like a long short story that contains all these different characters and stuff in it, and I think you'll like it, so please check that out. And yeah, without further ado, I will go into talking about Ultraman Zett Episode 4, which features collectible kaiju parts, spinning straw, into gold, and monster metals. So here we go. I find it interesting that coming from a hard sci-fi or science fiction perspective, you had budget cuts in the last episode and talking about securing budget to make things better, and then here in this episode you have Yuka lamenting to Bako that the higher ups, whoever the brass are over storage, refused to follow her designs specifically, and therefore they used a bunch of different manufacturers to make Windom, and it makes Windom run less efficiently and take 4 days total to charge its batteries for 5 minutes of active duty, which is crazy. However, it is reasonable that this sort of thing would happen, because I come from the United States of America, and here, good old Uncle Sam loves his war machines, and Congress people who, I think, yeah, Congress is the whole thing. It's both House and Senate. Anyway, yeah, Congress people will make sure and fight for them to have bits of a weapons platform, or a plane or a tank or whatever built in their city or their state, so their constituents will be happy that they got them, a job building weapons in their area. And basically, because it's so messy, and you have people who work for weapons factories going into the government, you have people who work for the government going to weapons factories, which you could call that a conflict of interest, I think, very fairly. They spread it all around, and they have, I would think, different companies in different states that all contribute parts to our war machines here that are used by the U.S. military. And I wonder if there's maybe a little something, I think that's a realistic depiction basically in Zett of what goes on with the military industrial complex or weapons that are created, and I just found that to be kind of curious. Alright, moving on. Not-So-Nocturnal Telesdon. I found it interesting that Telesdon was active during the day. I thought it was going to have a larger plot relevance, but really it just seems like its fire sac, or its engine, its kaiju engine, is the thing that is keeping it active during the day, even though it's a nocturnal creature, and they had to overcome it, and that's about it. So I thought it was going to turn into something really cool, and it was just kind of a small thing. It wasn't bad, it didn't go the way I wanted it to. Moving on, Blinking Kaiju. I love the fact that it is Telesdon, right? It's not Tesladon. That's a different one. Tesladon is, never mind. That's Musk. Anyway, Telesdon blinks, and I love it when the kaiju blink. Not all of them blink in the show so far, but the ones that do, it's great. In the original Ultraman from 62, in the first episode, you had Bemlar. He did not blink, but a couple episodes later, Neronga blinked, and Neronga's horn is a thing that's active in this episode and plays a big part in it. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute or so. Let's see, next topic. Oh, Yuka's Kaiju Collectibles. It is weird and gross and strange and interesting that Yuka collects kaiju parts, and she was all excited to get Telesdon skin samples from, what was it, from Windom's fingers? That was gross. And again, fun. And it really fits this vibe that she has of being like a mad scientist, but not an evil one. And yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting how they're, how they define or portray her character and what she does with that and what that means for her character. And it's kind of cool. Kind of weird, but it's memorable for sure. This lady loves kaiju to the point that she's collecting their corpse parts. That's nasty business. Anyway, I love when she goes to Bako and he gives her, like, he shows her that he's reusing a grate from a duct cover or vent cover or something from your boy Sevenger, and how he's repurposing this thing into something, bigger, which that ties into my theme of spinning straw into gold, which is a reference to Rumpelstiltskin. But what I'm saying is he's taking something that could have been trash and he's giving it a purpose and using it for something it wasn't originally designed for, and that is something that is, I don't know if it's a theme in the episode, but it's definitely a subject, an idea covered in this episode, and kind of broadly by the fact that we've got your boy. So I love Bako giving that wisdom over, and it's so cool, and it was such a cool scene, and it's like there were no kaiju in it, but it was still a really cool scene, and like it shows the strength of the storytelling here, that they can just tell stories about these people and their struggles, and it's awesome. But anyway, speaking of spinning straw to gold, Kaburagi takes corpse parts, kind of like Yuka, which I never realized before that there's such a a parallel between the two of them, and he uses them and I guess turns them into ultra metals and like whatever that green goo is that he uses in his machinery. And yeah, that's kind of interesting. But he has his own Zett riser, which I don't think I had noticed that before. I know he had like a weird gadget or two, but I don't remember seeing him with a Zett riser specifically, or maybe just the angle on it looked weird, so I didn't quite recognize it. And he's got his own little door into Z space or ultra space or whatever it's called that he gets to go through, and he does his experiments and his forging of the kaiju parts into the metals, which like I said, very interesting. And I think it's kind of odd. Like, is it because he has a Zett riser that he's able to enter that space, and is it ultra space, or is it dark space or monster space or something? Because I'm pretty sure they have something like that, an antithesis, an antithetical, force in space, as a, because there's the ultra one, there's the non-ultra one or whatever, which is, I think, just darkness. Sorry, I'm not super familiar with Ultraman, so I'm inelegantly sharing that idea. So Neronga's horn is the thing that's used to accelerate the power or the charging of Windom, which is cool. It also cooks it cooks the rice pudding or whatever it is that Haruki has in Yuka's fridge, and that's just funny. Like, it's funny there. It's cool that it's a callback to a couple episodes with the previous episode, I guess, where she put the horn in there, and it's just very interesting storytelling because it's layered. And I wonder if what they did for different characters is say, all right, we're gonna have all these things at play with all these different characters, and just kind of said, like, we're gonna have these 5 things happen with this character, and we're gonna sprinkle them throughout, and then have them develop over the course of episodes, so that there's something like variety in each episode, but it also is like this layered sort of storytelling where there's this thread you can follow for each character that has these things going on. Because I think it's really cool. So it's cool, like, mechanically in the show, but it's also cool for the actual storytelling of the show, and I really appreciate that. Kaburagi coming into the fight and adding the frills from the what is it? Whatever, I don't know what it's called, but the Godzilla knockoff kaiju that they have was really cool. And I'm just, I'm very curious about what the plot is and what the plan is. Going through again, I'm having a hard time remembering exactly how Kaburagi functions. Obviously he's an antagonistic force, but, how and to what purpose and to what end, and how does all his little things that he's doing achieve that? It's interesting because he's, I said play, he's kind of messing with things and seeing how they work, which is kind of what people or kids do when they play, right? So, couple things. Calling out the Ultra Fusion mechanic, is a demerit. Yes. I will get back to that in a few moments. So, when Zett tells Haruki that they need more speed, he does it in the most unnatural,
toy advertisement way he possibly could. I think the dialogue does not need to be slave to the toy ad, because all he had to say that would sound much better is, Haruki, we need more speed. He could even say, let's switch to Alpha Edge, and then show Haruki using the new metal to switch to, or no, that was the last episode, using the metals and the riser to switch forms. That sells the toy right there. The visuals sell the toy. And Haruki, yelling whatever he yells for that. And Burning Scarlet's for Beta Smash. I don't remember the other guys and their call outs, but I mean, just doing the transformation sequence, I think, is enough visually to make it look cool and look appealing, and to have somebody want that. I mean, not to mention things that they're going to do later in the show. I mean, they've got 3 or 4 Zett Risers total that appear in the show, and I think that's enough. I think that's definitely enough. Just saying Ultra Fusion doesn't make sense, because they're already fused, and honestly, it takes me out of it for a moment, because I think, well, what does he mean, Ultra Fusion? Are they doing something new? No, they're not doing something new. They're just doing what they've always done. So it just detracts for me. Yoko is flat on her back in Windom, and she is she's desperate to help Zett and Haruki. Well, Zett, she doesn't know it's Haruki yet. So she does this cool thing with the air jets that Windom has all over his body, and from laying flat on her back in the mech, basically the air pushes out of all the different ports, most at the shoulder, neck, and head, and then diminishing from there on down to the heels. And basically, Windom rises by hinging on his heels, or its heels, until she's at a standing position. Then she runs off and joins in the fight, and that was cool. It was a really cool visual flourish, and it was a lot of fun. And yeah, that's what I'm talking about it. And then the last thing is the monster medals, which in another episode or two, I have something I want to say about the Zett Riser itself and the whole medals thing, but I'm going to hold it off for now and just say it's interesting to me. Like I was talking earlier, there's the Ultra Metals, there's, the Land of Light, and then opposing that is the Land of, I don't know if there's an actual Land of Darkness somewhere, if there's, M78 is the Land of Light, and M87, or, 8-7M is the Land of Darkness, or something like that. But that could be the case, and there is this, dark force using the Zett Riser in, what's this guy's name? Kaburagi. And, obviously he's the one forging the monster metals. And I guess if there are ultra metals, it stands to reason that there would be monster metals to counter them as like a, universal balance type idea. And it makes me wonder, just from, again, like this show isn't hard sci-fi, but it has hard sci-fi elements in it. What is the, function of an ultra metal that's not being utilized? And how do you, get the essence of an ultra into the ultra metal? And then I guess the same question for a monster metal. What is that? What is the function of that? I don't know. It doesn't really matter, because it's a cool thing for the toys and for the show, and it makes, makes better kaiju or different kaiju. I guess it's really the same kaiju. They're just recycling them for previous things, Anyway, yeah, that's all of my thoughts for this episode of Zett. I'm looking forward to the next couple. I'm a little frustrated that they're releasing them in such rapid succession, but they're making way for Ultraman Blazer, which I suggest that you watch, and you look at my first thoughts on the preview of it, because I also talk about the context of the Zett dub as well, because the two things exist in the context of each other, and it makes sense. Just go listen to it. I hope you enjoyed that. Go to mjmunoz.com to leave any questions, comments, or other feedback you might have. There you can find all of my analysis, art, and fiction. I cover books, tokusatsu, comic books, anime, and more. Look around. You're sure to find something else that you'll enjoy as well. This has been a Story Over Everything production.